Good morning. I want to make what I hope to be a relatively brief video, but I don't know how. I don't plan these videos that I just start talking, let the camera run, and I leave this, in the hands of providence and fate. If God wants me to say something, he'll let me say it and put it on YouTube, and if God wants you to hear it, he'll put it your way. I believe in that type of providence. I believe in that type of, even more so, of how much God runs the world. And I wanted to talk about an issue that a lot of people are very emotional about on both sides. And it's the issue of Zionism. But I wanted to discuss it in a way that a lot of people will be surprised, will probably be offended. Going to be a little bit of a gadfly here. Generally, in the religious world, anti-Zionism is, associated with, particularly with a lot of, religious Zionists will say that they are the moderates, they are the centrists, and it's the extremists who are the anti-Zionists. But the truth is really almost exactly the opposite in most cases. Maybe not in all cases, but even in, some kind of surprising cases, it's a little different. But, essentially, what's the whole idea? What are we talking about? And it's as follows. Some of the biggest problems that the world has vis-a-vis relationship with religion and so forth is when people take eschatology and bring it into politics. Why is Iran such a dangerous country? We know Iran's a very dangerous country. I'm not saying it's an anti-Semitic country. The Jews in Iran, well, things aren't perfect, but that's because there are issues generally in the country. But they live as good as, or if not better than, just about anybody who lives in Iran, other than the leaders who prop themselves up above everybody else, and even the leaders aren't living that luxuriously. In Iran, they give Jews rights that they don't give to Muslims legally. And Jews are a protected minority in Iran. It's not a Jewish issue. But Iran, as a country, is a dangerous country to the world. And the major aspect of that is their obsession with eschatology. And generally, Shiite Muslims are obsessed with a certain level of eschatology that's part of their ideology, with the 12th Imam, the Mahdi, and so forth. But there's two types of eschatology. There's nothing wrong with eschatology in itself. Those who don't know, I'm using a big word, perhaps a lot of people don't know. I remember someone in Queens. They said eschatology. That's what I had for breakfast. Eschatology. Eschatology, whatever. It's not a very good joke, but I remember such a thing. I think that was Noach Shalos from Rabbi Schwartz who said that. What is eschatology? It's the study of the end times and the ideas of the end times, particularly in a religious sense. Although there can be, I guess, a secular type of eschatology. We do have futurists. We do have, a lot more of the secular ideals of eschatology coming in the world. You have to, I would say, what's the term? Synchronicity? Is it synchronism? I don't remember what it's called. Like, what's the name of that? The scientist. He talks about, at some point, the society on Earth is going to be transformed into something different because of the technology. So, technology, especially AI, that forms almost a secular type of eschatology. Singularity, I think they talk about, and there is a certain spiritual aspect in that idea, and a lot of religious people combine those ideas with their religious eschatologies. But it's not so much of an issue of having an eschatology, believing that such and such is going to happen at some point in the future, and that society is going to have a radical change, whether it's, and quite often, there's, in various religious teachings, you have first a catastrophic period followed by a period of world peace. World peace, I think everybody can agree, is good. It's the catastrophic part that's scary. But the big issue isn't even that much as much, especially if you believe that afterwards things are going to be really good. That gives people hope. That's very positive, and anytime people are going through difficult times, they can look forward to that hope of when things are going to be a lot better afterwards. Happy days are here again. But the issue that we have in a country like Iran is the fear is, whether it might be an unfounded fear, it might be a well-founded fear, is this... Are people going to do something to make all the bad stuff happen? The wars and the things like that, the Armageddon type of scenario, the apocalyptic scenario, to bring us to this state of perfection and peace and goodness that comes afterwards. And so, for the one who doesn't believe in Shiite ideology, this perspective of Iran having nuclear weapons and perhaps using it to bring about their ideas of their eschatology, it could be very frightening. But then perhaps some Jews and Christians might say, well, Ezekiel predicts that Persia will be attacking, so like this is a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. But the problem with that is when you mix politics and religion in that sense, is that you're running a major risk of danger. And I think it should be avoided. I think, we have to, it's one thing if something happens, once it happens, when it comes, that type of attitude. But, classically, it was always like, when the Mashiach would come, when the Messiah comes, we put these things off to some nebulous future, and that's it. And we don't have to be obsessed with making it happen. Just we wait until it happens. And so it's the same issue that we have here with those who see Jewish eschatology as something that they might want to bring about politically, or just take a wait-and-see attitude. And it's ironic that the ones who brand themselves to be the more centrist, the more moderates, are the ones who will politicize their eschatology more, although there certainly are liberal religious Zionists who don't engage in that so much. But there's a little bit of both. You do have even, let's say, a more liberal Orthodox religious Zionist, probably the standard bearer of liberal Orthodoxy would be Rabbi Avi Weiss, right? So when it comes to religious issues, very liberal. In America, particularly synagogue issues, these types of things. But I heard a lecture from him a couple of years ago at the New York Board of Rabbis, and he said, he spoke about his split with Rabbi Meir Kahana, who was, of course, the epitome of the ultra-nationalist, ultra-right-wing eschatologist, extremist type of approach. He was still a nice person, and he knew how to learn Torah a little bit. He was a Voiler Yid, and he was a Bal Chesed, a Bal Tzedakah. Those are the nice things about him. And he was not a racist, as much as people want to claim that he was. But his ideology was problematic, to say the least, from my perspective. But Avi Weiss, he said even though he split with Meir Kahana over certain issues, he would still be considered to be right-wing in Israel. He would still be considered part of the Israeli right, politically. Now, to be honest, this is a problem Avi Weiss has in general. He learned by Reb J.B. Soloveitchik, but he constantly goes against the teachings that Rabbi Soloveitchik taught. Which, on one hand, I understand that, but on the other hand, it's an issue, unless he had somebody else that he learned this from. And this is an issue that J.B. Soloveitchik was very middle-of-the-road, authentically centrist, authentically moderate when it came to issues of Zionism. Even though he was a leader of the religious Zionist movement in America, if you look at his theological approach to Zionism, he would fit almost more in the anti-Zionist realm, or the non-Zionist realm. from a theological, religious perspective. His Zionism was purely political. He described it as patriotic. I mean, I remember Brother Ruf Shlita, the Rav of the Broad Synagogue in Williamsburg, told me he heard a lecture from Rav Soloveitchik. I remember he said like this. He said, J.B. Soloveitchik is gewein a Chushvayid, es ist gewein kein Zioini. Gesagt, das hat gar nicht, das ist nicht das Kalte der Gula, nicht das Kalte, es hat gar nicht mit Mashiach. Ich bin ein Patriot. Meaning this Rabbi Schwartz, Brother Ruf, said to me that that Rabbi Soloveitchik, he heard him on the tape where he said that the state of Israel is not the first flowering of the redemption. It's not the beginning of the redemption. It's not the beginning of the beginning of the redemption. This has nothing to do with the Messiah. And they said all of his connections to the state of Israel are patriotic and not religious. Now I question why someone who's an American should have any feelings of patriotism to a foreign country, particularly if it's not for a religious purpose. That's a big problem. And he didn't live in Israel, he lived in America. He was an American citizen. He was born in Russia, Lithuania, but he was here in America. He was an American. I believe he was an American citizen. And he was very much pro-American. He celebrated Thanksgiving. He would have shiur early on Thanksgiving Day so he could go home to Boston and have a Sudas Haydah with his family, have a Thanksgiving meal with his family. And so he was not only American in the sense how the ultra-Orthodox communities are American in the classical sense of the founding of the Constitution, but Rabbi Soloveitchik was American also in the cultural sense, the way that many of the ultra-Orthodox are not. But he understood a middle-of-the-road approach to Zionism. It's already 18 minutes long. And even to today, you have some of these middle-of-the-road type of people. I forgot Rabbi Amsalem, I think his name, or I think he was a member of the Knesset. And his approach was middle-of-the-road, normal, meaning not extremist, but really the most middle-of-the-road, normal, not extremist approach would be simply not to have any type of Zionism. I mean, if you're an American, I understand you're Israeli, it's one thing. Look at the ideology of Professor Yeshayahu Leibowitz. Very much this type of almost a Satmar Chassid in his ideology as far as the state of Israel. A libertarian politically, and this is a much more normal, down to earth. It's not the extremist type of rhetoric, and it's the same thing with the Satmar Hasidim, are like I saw this one article where this fellow, he was saying the Satmar Hasidim are the real liberals, because you go into their synagogue and you have millionaires sitting next to paupers on food stamps, and they're all friends and they're all together, and they're not, and there's no class struggle. based on one's, financial standing. As in America, we're talking about, In fact, you'll find some of the most humble people, in addition to, of course, charitable people, are the millionaires and billionaires in the Satmar community, and they're just like everybody else, just normal guys. They happen to have a lot of money, but they'll sit and talk and hang out with people who have nothing. But it's more than that. That's an interesting approach. But it's also this, just be normal, live a normal type of lifestyle. When Mashiach comes. When the Messiah comes, the Messiah comes. But don't put people's lives in danger by making this artificial state that's just wars and terrorism and just bad stuff has been happening since 1948 and before that already, when the Zionist movement started in the 1890s, when there were pious Jews who wanted for religious devotion to come to the Holy Land, and they were fine until the Zionists came. I mean, they lived under the Turkish rule, and it wasn't perfect, but it's not perfect in New York City either, but it became much, much worse once the Zionists came. We see what happened in 1929. It was because of the Zionists, and I know, Mayor Kahane used to say, "Oh, look, it was before 1948, and there was pogroms." No, it was because of the Zionists. That's a historical fact. But and there we're not even talking about the eschatologists, but the real big issue, talking from the religious standpoint, are those who think that somehow they're going to politically bring about their awaited eschatology. And to imagine such a thing is just downright dangerous. It puts human lives in danger, Jewish lives and non-Jewish lives. We're all human beings. We're all made in the image of God. And it's a big, big issue. So this is something that we have to be cognizant of. We have to be worried about, and not to allow to destroy our world. Because especially when you talk about the nuclear Iran and these types of issues and how many millions of people could be killed. And what if it's not time for this eschatology to come? And I believe, with the perfect belief, that when God decides, there will be a Messiah, the Messianic Era, and so forth. And that there will be a resurrection of the dead, and all of these things. These are part of the basic dogmas of my faith that I have to believe if I believe in my faith. But that doesn't translate into let's do it. It's just the opposite. Let go and let God. Like Jeremiah said, don't believe these false prophets who are saying we're going to go back and rebuild Jerusalem right now. Settle in this land, build homes, plant vineyards, get married, have children, raise families, have your children get married, pray for the peace of the city.